Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to our Halaqa, Sunday Halaqa. Usual, a little bit late. Summertime, everything is shifted down. The nights are so long, and if you get up early for Fajr and everything, and you stay up, then your mid-morning is a bit long. But here we are, alhamdulillah, back with the fadl of Allah to read Al-Adab al-Mufrad, right? And before we begin, I usually like to begin with something that's been on my mind and a lot of people are thinking about, and I hear people talking about it, which is the idea that there are conspiracies out there in the world and theories about things. And one of the conspiracy theories that we have that seeing lately is about the coronavirus, and that, well, was this actually a real virus that is just natural? Or was it something concocted for people to, get sick for a reason, and then they're going to come in and save the day? But how they save the day is in fact their agenda embedded in that, and that's always the way things are done from time immemorial. From every major point of history, it's create a crisis, and people will call for help, and in the help, you embed in it what you want, right? So the Lusitania, for example, was a crisis that was set up by the U.S. government, and everyone knows that, so that it could be hit, and then the Americans could justify getting into the war. Pearl Harbor, you have similar commentary. The Hitler, when he burned down their building, okay, similar idea. At 9/11, similar idea. Okay, so they institute a worldwide and war on terror that you can go into Iraq and Afghanistan and justify all these things. Well, Afghanistan first, obviously, and then Iraq. So the idea that people who want to have an agenda, and they need the world to participate, right? They need their cooperation of a mass amount of people, so you get them to move in that direction willingly by creating an emergency in one area, a crisis, okay, and there's some bloodshed and death. There's always got to be some death, and then people go that way on their own. Now, but the question is that how do we as Muslims deal with that, and do we have anything to say about that? The answer is yeah. The thing is, you can't get so caught up in a conspiracy, whatever. Okay, it could be. Let's say it is, well, 9/11, pretty much. I mean, you have architects and engineers. You have over 500 architects and engineers telling you this was a controlled demolition, or it had nothing to do with the planes. It was a controlled demolition. So, okay, so what are we going to do now? Answer is that there's nothing you could do. From our perspective, when things are so far out of our hands, just as maybe coronavirus is similarly some kind of planned global event, okay? What are we going to do about it? The answer is that Allah Ta'ala has allowed it to happen for a wisdom. Yes, people are plotting. People have always been plotting. Iblis has always been plotting. It's not the first time people have plotted. Okay, this is just a bigger plan than anything else. It's still not going to push out the light of Allah, and it's still not going to disallow Muslims from trying to gain guidance, right? From us getting guidance and hidayah. Okay, and if there is some damage, we push back. But the idea of getting caught up in it is not from our sunnah. It's not from our way. I've never seen an imam or ulama get caught up in chasing these things and going about peddling these ideas. Okay, it could be, right? And it's likely, even in many cases, highly likely. But if Allah has allowed it to happen and there's no one to stop it, then don't get caught up in stopping what is already just not something that can be stopped. Right? Or if you get a piece of secret information, release it. But the idea of spending all this time on YouTube, I don't see it. I see that it's interesting news. It's probably more true than some other mainstream stuff that you'll get. But again, my question always goes back to, what do you want me to do about it? What's the amal here? Okay? You always have the question of what action can be taken here. There's no amal upon this. There's no action upon this. Right? So when there's no action, then don't bother yourself, with what is out there and, who to blame and stuff like that. So don't bother yourself so much with this stuff. All right, so let's get to our halaqa here. باب لا تنزل الرحمة على قوم فيهم قاطع رحم. We may have already done this, but that's okay. Hadith number 63. حدثنا عبيد الله بن موسى قال أخبرنا سليمان أبو إدام قال سمعت عبد الله بن أبي أوفى يقول عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الرحمة لا تنزل على قوم فيهم قاطع رحم. Mercy does not descend on a people who have amongst them someone who breaks their kinship bonds. Okay? Because the person is cruel who does that. He has inside of himself some cruelty and some inability to control, in a sense, his anger about things. And so his nature blocks the rahmah. The next bab, hadith number 64, and it's bab number 32. Sometimes the bab is only one hadith. Babu ithmi qati'i ar-rahimi. حدثنا عبد الله بن صالح قال حدثني الليث قال حدثني عقيل عن ابن شهاب أخبرني محمد بن جبير ابن مطعم أن جبير بن مطعم أخبره أنه سمع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا يدخل الجنة قاطع رحم. The one who cuts off a rahim does not enter Jannah. Hadith number 65. إن الرحم شجن من الرحمن. إن الرحم right شجن من الرحمة من الرحمن تقول يا رب إني ظلمت يا رب إني قطعت. So الرحم is Allah in this hadith given like a life. Okay, the concept, the abstract concept of kinship bonds. Kinship bonds is not something you can see, but with Allah Ta'ala it is a thing and has the ability, it is alive and can speak. And he says, Ya Rab, quti'at, Ya Rab, ظلمت. I've been cut off, I've been oppressed. Ya Rab, inni, I've this and that happened. Okay. فيجيبها, so Allah answers it, ألا ترضين أن أقطع من قطعك. Would you not be pleased if I cut off? Will it not please you that I cut off whoever cuts you off? وأصل من وصلك, and I will connect whoever connects you. Right? So this is what they call it's the abstract matters in this life, but they exist with Allah in some way in the next life, that is, or in the heavens, that can speak and complain and experience. Almost they have an existence more than just merely being an abstraction. Hadith number 66. حدثني آدم ابن أبي إياس قال حدثنا ابن أبي ذئب قال حدثنا سعيد بن سمعان قال سمعت أبا هريرة يتعوذ من إمارة الصبيان والسفهاء. Abu Hurairah seeking refuge from the time when youth and fools lead. Right? Youth and fools lead. Now, youth is really synonymous with ignorance in a sense. Okay? It really is. Because ask yourself, you today has to make a big decision. Would you entrust that big decision with you of 30 years ago? Let's say maybe you're not that old. Let's say 20 years ago. And if you're like in college, let's say 15 years ago. Would you entrust that decision to be made to the same person, you, but 20 years ago? Let's say you're in high school. You now to make a big decision, or you 6 years ago? Right? Every single person I've ever asked this question said, "Oh, definitely not me 20 years ago." Okay? So we all agree that with age comes a great amount of improvement. You learn more, you had more experience just by virtue of being alive. One factor here. The one factor we're talking about. Just by the virtue of being alive. Okay? And living. You would prefer yourself today over yourself yesterday. Right? So we've all basically condemned our own youth So if we're all condemning our own youth, individual youth, then we have in fact all condemned youth, it's in general, to being too inexperienced and lacking in enough life happenings and experiences to actually be entrusted with big decisions. And that's what leadership is. It's who do you trust with big decisions. And that's why whenever youth, and I love youth, the youth bring energy, they bring so much. It doesn't mean that they're entrusted with the biggest decision, because that's not the only factor of life. Okay, being entrusted with big decisions is not the only factor of life. There's a lot of other things. That's why Allah created youth. Okay, and everyone loves youth because you love your own life. Wasn't your own life, wouldn't you wish from other aspects that you were 20 years younger, right? From your physical body, pretty much that's almost like the only thing. Your hopefulness, right? It's your physical body. Do you want your hair today or your hair from 20 years ago for guys, right? Guy's 40 years old and he looks like a 20-year-old and he's looking at that head of hair, mashallah, right? Or the ability to just eat whatever you want, the energy that they have, sleep whenever they want, all that stuff that exists when you were 20. So youth is not all bad. But one thing that it's not is entrusted for big decisions. Okay? That's one thing that is out of the question. That everyone condemns their own youth when it comes to that question. So you'd rather have your experience now, but the body of the past. And not only the body, the spirit. Because they haven't been burned by life. That's why. They haven't been burned by other people. They haven't lived long enough to be burned by other people. And so they have a type of hopeful, happy approach to life in general. Now, when you don't see that in youth, you should be worried. It's like, what has your upbringing been like? When you don't see that stuff, in youth, when you see them just so full of anger and so full of they want to blame somebody, you really worry about how they were raised, because must be that whatever upbringing they had, there was something terribly wrong with that upbringing, because that's not natural. Natural thing is for youth to be happy, idealists, full of forgiveness and this type of idealism. That type of thing is absent in some people, and you worry about that, and you should worry about that. So Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, subhanallah, كان يتعوذ من إمارة الصبيان والسفهاء. Youth, children, and fools. Now, who's the fool? The fool is somebody who's obviously not a youth, right? Some people grow up and just never learn, and they are known as, in Sharia, as sufaha. You would not trust them with your money. Okay? Quran says, لا تؤتوا السفهاء أموالكم. You don't give a bank account to a fool and say you're going to manage the zakah or something like that. He's a fool. You don't give any important decision. So how do you know someone who's a fool? If the people in general would not entrust them with their money or with any important decision, it's a fool. In the community, you know it when you see it, right? We all sort of know. We might not say it, but when this person talks, just don't take it seriously, right? That's the fool. That's the Safi. And of course, there's a gradation of that. But that's the meaning of the Safi. فقال سعيد بن سمعان فأخبرني ابن حسنة الجهني أنه قال لأبي هريرة ما آية ذلك. What is the sign of that, time? What is the sign of this? قال أن تقطع الأرحام, that the kinship bonds, family ties, are cut off. ويطاع المغوي, and the maghwi, who is, let's see, those who mislead, the people are ghawi. Ghawa is the verb to go astray. Those who are astray are obeyed. وَيُعْصَى الْمُرْشِدُ, and the one who is a good guide is disobeyed. All right? That's the sign of it. And today I look at, sometimes I'm seeing something in the news, and I see like a 70, 65-year-old woman and a gang of protesters literally pouring stuff on her head. One guy threw powder, another one threw water, And I'm thinking, this lady, like, you don't see your grandma in this lady? Right? And can't imagine what she said, but if you had a family, you'd know that every family has a little bit of quacky people in them. You tolerate it. So whenever you go to traditional cultures, their families are so big, so they all have experience. And by nature, you find that people view an older person, and they start giving them a little, not going to be the same, but similar respect to their father, right? Because they're accustomed to respecting their dad, accustomed to respecting their mom, their aunts, their uncles. So it's a habit. To respect the elder is a habit. And it should be a habit that we carry on. Okay? So it becomes really physically difficult. Physically becomes impossible to disrespect an elder. No matter how vile, it becomes really difficult to disrespect the elder. Just as it by nature. And then the grandparents, even far more, right? It becomes very difficult to not honor the elders. And that's in any traditional culture, you have that. So you could be an old man, the youth would have, honored you, not just respected you. You go into a masjid, an old man comes into the masjid. It doesn't matter if you don't know him, the youth, they should bring a chair for that old man, right? That should be common, and I see it in many masajid. An old man comes in, all of a sudden, youth who don't even know him, they go and bring him a seat. The old man opens his mouth, hypothetically talks some nonsense, right? Yells at them for making noise or something like that. Or just talks meaningless talk. They have experience with that because maybe in their family they have something similar. So they are respectful. Okay? They don't answer back. All right? They don't engage in an argument. They're respectful. Why? Because they've practiced doing it. Maybe one of their own uncles is one of those people. So it's a habit. So once the family structure has broken down, usually because of zina, now all these relationships don't exist anymore. And now sometimes you have parents so guilty of giving youth a horrible life, like who knows who your dad is? Who knows who your mom is? They don't take care of them. They're sometimes, whatever. Ignore them. Sometimes they're very well off, but they ignore their kids. So the kid then talks back. And the parent, because the parent did wrong, has no moral right to teach them any manners, to demand any respect. So the opposite has now become customary. Commonplace that kids will curse out their parents. Whenever a parent is cursed out like that, most likely they did something wrong. They don't have the moral rights, okay, or the authority to say, excuse me, who are you talking to like that, right? They don't have the moral authority to do that because they themselves did wrong in the upbringing. So you see how it's a pattern? Then, so if I'm used to doing that to my parent, I'll do that to another adult, right? I had a 15-year-old the other day call me bro. Hey, bro. Bro? I'm old enough to be your dad. I'm not your bro, okay? You must talk like that to your dad. There's no other... No, where are you going to learn that? It's because you talk to your dad like that. That's why, right? So you think that that's okay to talk to everyone like that. So see how family breakdown is really the breakdown of everything else, right? Once family breaks down, you end up with all this this trickle down, and that's why you shouldn't be surprised. 60-year-old woman, okay, 70-year-old, she was really old, right? I'm surprised she didn't have a walker or a cane, and obviously she had a different political view than them. And it's a gang, like 17 youth with like masks and stuff attacking her, yelling at her, right, kicking her. I'm thinking to myself, this is not a society you can interact with, right? It's kind of when you take the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, go home, close the door, right? And don't deal with these people. You can't deal with these people. How can you talk to people with that no modicum, not even a working sense of any respect? Because you're not going to get to a conclusion except by dialogue, and dialogue requires respect. So, important hadith here from Sayyidina Abu Huraira, that seeking refuge from the time when youth and fools have taken over. And I think that youth and fools have taken over. I think that fools are on one side of the political spectrum. Complete fools. Even they're adults, right? But they're complete fools. And on the other side of the spectrum, its youth have completely taken over. Okay? So we're actually exactly between what Sayyidina Abu Hurairah just said. Youth on one side have completely taken over the one side of the political spectrum, and fools have taken over. Fools, I don't know if they know how to read or determine fact from whim. Okay, from some of the things that go on, and these are the leaders, and they're truly the extremes of both parties, but they've taken over. They're really driving both parties. So you really wonder what the future is going to hold. And alhamdulillah, we have this guidance. The Prophet ﷺ has warned us that this is going to happen in human history, and it'll happen, it'll come, and it'll go. Next chapter. Babu uqubati qati'i rahimi fi dunya. The punishment of this, the one who cuts off his kinship ties in this life. So it's not a punishment that awaits you in the akhirah. And this hadith is an Abi Bakrata. There's Abu Bakr and Abi Bakrata. Okay. He says here, ما من ذنب, there is no sin, أحرى أن يعجل الله لصاحبه. يعجل here is منصوب بأن, فعل مضارع منصوب بأن. أن يعجل الله لصاحبه العقوبة في الدنيا. There is no sin which is more deserving for Allah Ta'ala to hasten the punishment for the one who does it in this world. The punishment will come in this world for the one who commits it, مع ما يدخر له في الآخرة, along with what he has kept for him in the akhirah. So he's going to get punished in both worlds. من قطيعة الرحم والبغي, more than cutting off kinship ties and rebellion. Okay, al-baghi is to rebel, right? To call, or it's oppression in general, but it's specifically like rebellion. And you have people like this who just love to tear down authorities, right? Okay, tear down authorities. You're gonna have a consequence, and the consequence is there's gonna be a vacuum of authority. Just because you're tearing it down doesn't mean some angel from heaven is gonna come and fill its place. You're going to tear it down, and if you fill its place, then you've given your followers the precedent, and you've taught them that the way to interact with authority that you don't like is to tear it down. So as soon as they don't like you, they'll tear you down, and that's the punishment. Okay, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ says here, is that qati' ar-rahim, the one who cuts off kinship ties, and the rebels. Think about this: the cycle that rebels perpetuate will come back to eat them. It's going to come back, as they say, chicken come home to roost, because it's going to come and bite them. Okay, just as they bit and tore down the authority at their time, and it could be that the authority was oppressive. It could be, right? But reactions don't always justify, or oppression doesn't always justify any kind of reaction either. But you set the precedent, okay, that when we don't like something, when someone does something wrong, that the reaction should be tear it down. You set the precedent. So now you're going to get the consequence the moment that people don't like what you are upon. Okay? And they're going to use their emotions the way you used your emotions. Okay? No difference. So this is why they're going to get that uquba in this life. And what about the qati ar-rahim? You sort of need your family. You can't go existing without human beings are social creatures. You need them. And to cut them off, you're depriving yourself of a lot of benefit, and you're also setting a precedent, right? And there are only some times where you can cut off. When we say cut off, the opposite of cutting off doesn't mean that you're over their house every weekend, that you're message them every once in a while. That's it. It says there's no intended purpose not to talk to them. That's what qat' ar-rahm is. So you may have, I know some people that have like 50 cousins in New Jersey, 30 cousins in another Chicago or whatever, 100 cousins in Pakistan. Qat' ar-rahm is the idea that you intentionally cut people off, especially that distant relative. The distant relative, not distant, but not immediate family. Okay? And who's going to sit there being in touch with 200 people? Okay? You're busy. But are you intentionally cutting them off? No. If you were to see them, if they were to come visit, you would host them. You'd be happy. You would smile. Right? You'd keep up that bond. Okay? So that's for those who are from the second tier of the family. From the immediate tier of the family, of course, you have to keep those bonds by putting some effort. Now, what is that? Is that constant every single... No, it's Eid, holidays, marriages, sick, anytime out of the blue. So it should be something that's reasonable. Okay? And that's urfi. It is urfi. In some villages, it's going to be every single day. Okay? In some villages, it's going to be once a week. Some areas, it's going to be different. So, and cultures, right? There are cultures. I know cultures where they talk very fondly. I met a guy. He was a convert from a different culture, and I say that because he's from a different culture. And he says that he talking about his dad very fondly about his dad. So what is your dad doing now? He said, I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a while. Actually, it's been like 5 years. We haven't talked, but he's a great guy. Like 5 years? You haven't talked to your dad in 5 years? Wait, you're not? Is it because you became Muslim? No, he's not the talking type. 5 years? Guys haven't talked? So let's say they both become Muslim now. You think they're, suddenly going to be over each other's house every weekend or something like that? No. So there's urfi matters. He's not going to be upset. It's really about. It's just like. Al-Ghazali talks about how do you know certain things that are sort of with a gradient. He said, how do you know when you're full? Is there a set way to know when you're eating dinner and you're full, or is it sort of like you know it when you see it type of thing, or when you feel it? Likewise with this rahim. Okay, it's sort of like when the other person's upset, then you've gone too far, right? And when the other person's happy, then you've done enough. So it's the same thing. All right, let's take one more and then we'll stop here. Bab 34, Bab Laysa al-wasilu bil-mukafi'. He does not unite ties who reciprocates. Al-mukafi' is someone who reciprocates, okay, something. Reciprocation is that I do something good to you, you do something back to me. He said that's not al-wasil. That's adab. Al-wasil is the person who, intends, who does the connection. So the first person to write the message, or to pick up the phone, or to give a gift or something. So hadith number 68 says, is عن الأعمش والحسن ابن عمرو بن فطر وفطر عن مجاهد عن عبد الله بن عمرو قال سفيان لم يرفعه الأعمش إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ورفعه الحسن وفطر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس الواصل بالمكافئ ولكن الواصل الذي إذا قطعت رحمه وصلها. The واصل قطعت رحمه وصلها. The واصل الرحم. واصل means the connector. If someone cuts it, he connects it. So if someone cuts him off, he gets involved and connects that rahim. Okay? That's what it means, al-wasil wal-qata'. The qata' is the cutter, the wasil is the reconnector. Now, someone who just reciprocates something does not count in the sight of Allah as someone who connects kinship. That he just counts as someone who has manners. That's it. You're responding appropriately. That's all it is. Okay? So, it's not necessarily you're to be jumping up and down to be rewarded for that. You're just having good manners. That's it. Likewise, when someone says Assalamu alaikum, he's the one with 99 rewards, and the one who responds, you had to respond. You're obligated to respond. You have no choice now. Wa alaikum assalam, you get one reward for that. So this is the idea that even one time Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, one of his soldiers came to him and he said that he was in dire need. So Sayyidina Ali hurriedly got him some money and gave it to him, and then he was upset And then Al-Hasan said, Father, you should be happy because you solved his problem. He said, no, he's my soldier. I should have asked about my soldiers, how they were doing. How long has he been suffering before mustering the courage to come to me? And how many other soldiers are out there who are embarrassed to come and ask? Right? So he viewed them as, these are my soldiers. I have to go and ask about them and make sure they're okay. Okay, so he said, this was not sadaqah, this was adab. Sayyidina Ali said, this was not sadaqah, this was just good manners. So how important is that? So when you're just answering something, it's very different, than going out and taking the initiative to help people. Okay, so let's stop here at hadith number 69, chapter 35. Let's jot that down. Okay, what's today's date? August 9th. August 9th. 63 to 68. All right, good. And let's take a look at our live stream here, or live chat. Can we attend family or friend weddings that are mixed genders not dressed properly? All right, common question, happens all the time. Every family is now pretty much touched by some of this stuff that goes on. And so the answer to that would be that you want to try to measure and ask yourself, if I don't go, would this totally cut off, cause a bigger problem in the family? Okay, so you're weighing two evils. Not going is a possibility. Going is the other possibility. So you have to weigh the two evils. Okay? If the evil of not going outweighs the evil of going, then you would go, the harm I should say, is the harm. So you would go with a limited approach. And I've been in this situation too. Okay, there are some times where it's not practical to put up a fight, right? This is not a hill there's not a fight that's going to happen. Okay, you're going to go, and first of all, in a sense, you're like, how would you know unless you went? Right? How would you know unless you went? So if you say, you know what, I'm not coming because there's going to be nakedness, right? And there's going to be music and dancing. It's almost like they're saying, oh, so you're judging and you're prejudging before you haven't even gone yet. How do you know how people are going to dress? So you bring up that question for yourself. You end up going, as we tend to all do, but there's a limited approach of going. You go in, you step in, you give your salams to the people. You step out a little bit. You go with some like-minded people. You take a walk around. They're usually nice wedding halls, right? You take a walk around the wedding hall. All right, you come back in for another appetizer. You step into the bathroom, make wudu, go into ask for the room to pray in. You all pray, and guess what? We hang out here for another 20 minutes, right? So we're there. People see us. We have shown up to your wedding, okay, that you invited us to. We're smiling. We're giving the gift. The dinner's there. You go for the dinner. You eat the food, okay? You step outside. Again, once the dancing starts, you leave. So you've done your job. I call this limited attendance. Limited attendance. Okay? And so we all do this, but at the same time, I have, personally feel, and we have videos on this, right? We have to make a change on the way we have weddings. It's like good people become something else on the wedding. They know the ahkam of Sharia about music, about nakedness, about mingling of genders. What happened? And then I'm telling you, it's usually tend to be Muslims who maybe are on the poor side of things, but they have a greater respect because they don't have the temptation in front of them of this $50,000, $30,000 weddings, and they end up doing things right. A lot of times. And I'm happy to go to those weddings. Right? I'm happy to go to that. The idea of weddings is just publicizing it, feed people, and be happy for a little bit, and that's it. The idea of the Western wedding is this humongous thing, huge event, all right? And drinking and nakedness and all sorts of stuff going on. Okay, but you're going to do that fine because we have Westerners becoming Muslims, so they're going to keep some of their culture, and they have parents that expect certain things. You have to be reasonable. There's no such thing as Islamic and Western anymore, almost. There's going to be a gradation. But as Muslims, we're going to look at where in this gradation do we have to remove certain things. Obviously, we're all going to remove the alcohol part. We know that. But are we just going to, imitate everything else to the T? We have to think clearly. There are muharramats going on here. And just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean it's right. Right? So we have to think twice about this, and it's not that complicated. It's not that complicated, right? You don't want to put yourselves in situations where, everyone's wearing these tight clothes and looking at each other. I wouldn't do that, right? So it's not that complicated to fix it. So you just have to have the courage to fix it, to do it. If one's youth is based on following old people who are successful in dunya, also ulama of different types of ages, what tricks does the nafs of that youth need to be worried about? So we follow a gradation. Sometimes you follow, eventually you sit and listen, and then you're involved in the discussion, and then smaller decisions, eventually at a certain age, smaller decisions are left to you. Big decisions now you're consulted upon. And the way in which our ummah works is the way of al-umara wa shura. You have leaders and you have shura. And youth, they gradually move up into that position. And it's a beautiful cycle because the older you get, the guarantee that the youth will also respect you as well. You get more secure the more you get older. Whereas in a youth-driven culture, the older you get, the less secure you get because you're going to be phased out, kicked out, removed by the next wave of rebellious and blaming youth, okay, and disrespectful youth. So it's an insecure culture. It's like you're headed to a guaranteed rejection eventually. I'd rather wait in my youth, okay, and be part of a process that slowly gets me into a position where now I'm respected by I put in my time. And by showing an example of respecting elders, you don't have to even say it. By doing it, your youth are looking at you and they see, okay, he's respecting the elder, right? And this is the way we do things, right? So you have to have sabr. In a society like that, the youth have to have sabr, and they have to know, just rationally and logically and objectively, that the amount of experience and knowledge that they have to draw upon is just far less than the amount of knowledge and experience that their elders have to draw upon. It's just a fair and logical and objective reality. Okay, your elder is not as good looking as you are. He's got a little bit of a stomach and he's balding and he's white haired. And you are some hotshot that all the women like. Okay, that's your ni'mah. His ni'mah is he gets to make decisions. It's a trade-off. And the more you lose your luster and you're not, that dashing guy anymore, but now you're making a lot more money and you're getting to make bigger decisions. It's a trade-off that Allah has, right? So enjoy the ni'mah Allah gave you now. Be patient and you'll get the other ni'mah later. So what do you want? You want to be the dashing guy with the ni'mah of youth and you want to make the big decisions? No. And what do you want for the elder? The dunya has left him, and now the people are kicking him to the curb too? That's going to be you eventually. Don't you think? That's going to be you eventually. So someone who doesn't put two and two together like that is really a fool. Someone who doesn't realize that if I perpetuate this type of culture, it's going to bite me in the back. Guaranteed. Because you're going to get older, things will change. And guess what happens when you get older? Your temperament won't allow you to make certain changes. Everyone says, when I'm old, I'm going to be cool. right? I'm going to be this. I'm going to be one of those up-to-date old people, right? Your personality won't allow it. There's a hardening that happens. Just like your body, you can't get an old man, 60 years old, to go pole vaulting, right? Or to run and jump over to do things with their body. He can't happen. It won't happen. And if it happens, it's the exception of 1 out of a million. But some of these people, I see them in the supermarket, they're lucky they can bend down and pick up something that they dropped. Okay? Because their body doesn't allow them. Likewise, the temperament doesn't allow them to do certain things. Your temperament won't allow people, for example, let's take an issue of music, right? Because they always talk about this. Old folks, by their nature, will not they can't come to accept certain new trends. They're not going to dress the way the trends are, or they're not going to, and also it would look odd, right? It would look funny. It's not fitting. And the youth don't want it. Let's take 1 million, 200, 100 million or something, 65 and above age, and throw them on TikTok. The TikTok stock will go down because the youth will run away. The youth don't want it. So the youth themselves want a differentiation. There's certain things are for our generation and certain things for your generation, right? It's just appropriate. It's fitrah that way. Throw a whole bunch of people at Facebook, all of a sudden the youth left Facebook. Throw some old people on Twitter, they'll leave Twitter. Okay? Throw them on InstaChat or whatever it is, Snapchat, they'll all leave that. Okay? So they themselves don't want that. So what if the first cousin has rejected Islam? That's why I said I didn't finish my thought. There are certain times that you are allowed to break kinship ties. And it doesn't count as breaking kinship ties anymore. And that is ridda and fisq. Ridda is obviously apostating, leaving Islam. Fisq is to be shamelessly open about your sins or to adopt a heretical view. At that point, you are permitted to keep a distance and to break that tie because that person has, لا تجد قوما يودون من حد الله ورسوله. Right? You will not find a people having intimacy with people who cut off, who openly, brazenly go against God and His Prophet and break the boundaries, the hudud of Allah and His Messenger, the boundaries. So those are the instances in which you can not talk to somebody anymore, and you can keep a distance from whoever harms you. If somebody harms you, you can keep a distance from them. So if somebody, is a regular Muslim like you and me, but when I go there, he's telling me off all the time. He's making fun of me all the time. I don't have to go. I'm not cutting him off, but I'm protecting myself from harm. That's it. Hamza says, I made a point on Twitter yesterday how God's law is objective. A Muslim brother replied that he found it hard to believe that anything can be objective in a world of subjectivity. How can convince him that we can have objectivity in this world for this brother who seems to be on the edge of belief and doubt? If he doesn't believe in objectivity, period, that's a different discussion. If he's talking about the Sharia, we say that our law is the core principles are unchanging and the application has flexibility. That's what we say. Flexibility, the word for that is muruna, and the word for firm foundation is thabat. So the usul are thabit. They're firm. They don't change. These usul don't change. But the amal upon it has muruna, has flexibility, right? There's flexibility on how to act it. So if someone doesn't believe in objectivity itself, then he also that's a problem. If someone doesn't believe in objectivity at all, then how does he have any conviction with the statement that he just made? Then the statement that he just made is subjective too. That's why the ulama of kalam, a lot of them began their books and they mentioned in it haqa'iqul umuri thabitatun. The reality of things is a default setting. It's taken as a given. Haqa'iqul umuri thabitatun. So there are certain realities that are mutawatir amongst us that cannot be questioned, because once you question them, You can't have a discussion. So, for example, are you you and am I me? If I question my own existence, and then everything that comes out of my existence, such as this discussion, is also questionable. So there's no point to have a discussion with them. So people who don't believe in a reality that has any objectivity to it, we can't have a discussion with them. So therefore, it's out of play. Okay. So that idea and that thesis that, do we really exist? Okay, you can have that doubt all you want, but what you have done is removed yourself from any conversation, because you don't even know the conversation exists. You don't even know the evidence. What is a conversation or a dialogue? It's, I'm going to bring evidence. You're going to bring evidence. You're going to use it with your logic. I'm going to try to poke holes in your logic. Okay, so it's facts and it's logic to reach a conclusion. So if you don't believe that facts exist, there's no objectivity, there's no real reality, then you don't have facts. And you don't have a way of thinking about facts and putting together a conclusion about facts. So therefore, there's no dialogue, there's no talking. So once someone goes that route, you could say goodbye, because there's no point in having any discussion with that person. My immediate family and I haven't been getting along since I got married. They've abused me emotionally, psychologically, and economically. I have tried to fix this relationship. It's very toxic. Whenever I hear hadith about kinship, I feel guilty. Are there exceptions of breaking kinship ties? When is it allowed in toxic, emotionally abusive families? Now, I'm not going to comment on your family because I'm only hearing one side of the story. However, as we said earlier, you are allowed to flee from abuse. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to flee from abuse. And if you are facing abuse, you are allowed to flee from that. Okay? And keep a distance, that's all. So, things don't have to, why don't we look at a gradient? Things should not be binary. We're in love with each other, we're cutting off ties. No. Remove cutting off ties. As long as they're regular Sunni Muslims, remove the cutting of ties. Go to the edge of that of, I'm keeping a distance. That's it. I'm upset. I don't like this. It's not good for me. I'm keeping a distance. But don't say cutting ties. That's it. So there should not be this binary of either we're in love or we're cutting off relations. What days and times are the community updates? We actually stopped doing community updates. We have Monday, Safina Sadi Halaqa at 6 o'clock. And then we have the classes. And then we have this Halaqa here. Once the day gets shorter, we can start doing that. We're going to start doing the community updates again once the days get shorter. And because people like to be out these days. Can we buy a gold ring for the man and women on engagement ceremony? A man cannot have a gold ring, obviously. But the idea of that is that it's a we should only be following in those habits on a couple conditions. So let's say it's a completely no Muslim culture had ever done something like that. Let's say hypothetically, right? Like the wedding band. Now people are doing it. Now, should Muslims do it or not? The answer, it's a gradient. Is it haram? First of all, it's not haram. Is imitating non-believers, even in something that's not haram, what's the ruling about that? If you're imitating it because you're enamored by them, and you want to be like them, then no, it's haram to do that. Maybe makruh, right, is a better term. If it just happened to just spread in your culture, and it originated with some non-believers, and it spread so far and wide in the culture because certain people wanted to imitate them, but then those certain people were parents, and so the kids sort of had no choice of the second generation, and now it's just far widespread, and now it's entered into our custom, then there's no harm in it, right? So the real harm is, do you desire to imitate Or when you do something, are you doing it to imitate someone who's, غير مؤمن? If that doesn't exist, and it's just become a habit amongst the people, and maybe it started off bad, but now it's become a habit, then, and it's not forbidden, then that's the most important thing. Then there is nothing that's going to be, objectionable. That you won't be sinful to do that. So let's say, common example, white dress on the wedding day. I don't think that there's any, Muslim girl grow up in America. I don't know what they do in England. I guess in England. And then she's getting married. She naturally is going to buy a white dress without thinking. Is trying to imitate anybody. Yeah, that's what they've seen, but that's fine, right? Just because you've seen something doesn't mean you're intending to imitate. So that's the question. Intent to imitate is what the intent that we should remove. The intent to imitate. One thing that I still don't do, and I don't think I'll ever do in my lifetime, because I'm like allergic to it, is when I go to the weddings and there's a champagne glass. Now, I love the drink. I love the sparkling apple cider or whatever. I'm not drinking it from that glass. I'm not pouring it from that bottle. Some people bring me that bottle as a gift. I take it, I put it in some other jug, okay? And I throw that bottle away, and I tell my kids to do it too. I'm transmitting it to them too. They have an allergy. They never see it in the house with the gold foil. Now, by the way, this could spread eventually. It could spread so far and wide in the Muslim households that it doesn't signify anything anymore, right? But to me, it signifies something. So I'll never drink from those glasses, and I'll never let any of my dependents, as long as they're young kids, in my care, I don't let them drink from them either. But we do love the drink, and we drink from the regular cup. So it's like a gradient, these things. And it's oftentimes what's in your heart. To me, it symbolizes something. To the next generation, it might not. He might grow from age 5, seeing them at the wedding tables, and he's never been, except to Muslim weddings, right? And he's seen them in every single Muslim wedding, so it doesn't mean anything to him anymore. So the urf can change like that, right? We're not liable to investigate, the origin of a neutral thing, all right? However, if it comes to light that the origin is pagan as religious, it's a religious thing, then we leave it off. Like Halloween, for example. Well, even if it becomes a secular holiday, we'd never do it. If Christmas becomes a secular winter holidays, right, we'd still leave it off. You're not going to celebrate Christmas, okay? So simple as that. Hanukkah, if it just becomes a purely, secular thing, let's light candles or whatever, and, it's still, we're not going to celebrate a Jewish holiday. As much as we love Sayyidina Musa, we're not celebrating their holidays. Simple as that. So that's it. That's how you look at, these matters that are cultural, but they originated in the imitation of non-believers. Because the Prophet wants us to be distinct. Why would you imitate somebody else? So look at what we're wearing here. I've seen mashayikh dressed like this, right? There's no intent, zero intent to imitate. It's just the urf, right? It's a norm of life now. So, Irfan Mogul, clinical psychologist from Pakistan. Very impressive study and degree. Haris Amin says, when you go to those weddings, try to get obstructed view seating. That's great. All the pious people are sitting in the beards are sitting in the corner. All the beards are in the corner in those weddings. You ever notice this? Right? The beards, they're all sitting in the back. The no tie people, some people, they still have an allergy to wearing a tie. I don't. I like ties sometimes, right? But it's sort of a urf that some people they don't like wearing ties because it's spread amongst some religious groups that the tie is, it's one of those symbols. I'm not against ties, right? I have ties, right? But, I don't wear it every day, but I have ties. I'm not really against them. But it is one of those Western habits that you find a lot of pious Muslims, imams, sometimes they'll never wear a tie. And you'll see that crowd with the blazer and the kufi sitting at the edge of the ballroom in the back talking so that they can be quick to the exit and no one sees them exiting, right? So that's what Harris Amin calls the obstructed view seating. We can call them, as you know, for us who are trying to lower our gaze, those are the real high price seats, right? Those are the seats you want to get to quickly. But nowadays, by the way, the new thing is you can't even choose where you're going to sit in the wedding. You go and you have to look for your assignment, table 7, table 12, right? And they see who you're assigned with. What if your cousins, aunts, and uncles are not interested in seeing you if the whole family is kind of in a fight? Again, seeing you is one end. How about relaying a message? How about sending a text message? How about sending an email? 2 lines. Assalamu alaikum, Eid Mubarak. I just want to say, I heard you were sick. Hope you're well. I'm telling you, those very little tiny interactions may build up. So always look at the gradient. It doesn't have to be seeing. It could be just a text message. Send it yourself. You don't have to worry about if they reply or not. How does one respectively ask a wealthy person to train them to be like them if one has the image of fi sabilillah? Great question. Find out what they do and start doing something that is helpful to them. Okay? Start doing something. Don't ask them to train you, because you're now adding something to their plate that they don't have to do, that's going to take up time. But you, whatever field they're in, try to bring something of value, like a volunteer. Be a volunteer for them. Bring them anything of value, right? They may shoo it aside the first 10 times because it's not of value to them, but you get better, okay? And eventually they'll find you useful. When you're useful to them, when you're utilitarian and beneficial to them, they may start bringing you in and giving you jobs. You become like a volunteer. You become an intern, right? Who are the most people who have benefited, let's say, from the masjid? When I look at the masjid, who has benefited the most? It's the people who didn't say, come and teach me. It's the people who said, can I volunteer? And I say, yeah, you can volunteer. Yeah, pick up a rug, fix the bookcase, right? Those people, I want them around because they make my life easier in the masjid. But when I want them around, all of a sudden they're hearing discussions, they're hearing about masail, things like that. So if you want to become a mentor for someone like that, or a mentee, be serviceable. Don't go and ask, help me. No, offer something that they would want as a volunteer. Go to their office. Say, hey, I'll volunteer for free 2 hours a week. Just tell me what to do. And you'll learn the trade that, that they're upon. Is it ever permissible for a Muslim to use bad language in extreme circumstances? I heard in it, yes, there is. But if the bad language involves accusations of zina, such as son of a this or son of a that, then no, because that would imply an accusation of zina to their parents. But I have asked about construction work. You cannot work in construction, right, without sometimes using foul language. And if someone says, oh, no, you have to have taqwa. Yes, we have to have taqwa, 100%. But I have a question for you. Are you saying that, have you done it? Have you dealt with those people? No, you haven't. So you're talking theory. That's it. Let's bring the Muslim people who work in construction with these people. I can guarantee you, very few of them who deal with those types of people on a daily basis are respected unless they utter certain foul words, right? It's a code almost. And the fuqaha, I've asked about this, they've said, as long as they've said that if it's a necessity, becomes a necessity, it becomes a lesser of two evils, then they can't talk like that, right? But only when it's needed, okay? Because some people, this is a fact. This is not something that is, it's a reality on the ground. You just have to experience it. Go deal with them yourself and see how far you're going to get. So, it becomes permitted in that respect. Or we shouldn't even say permitted. It becomes like lesser of two evils. In Palestine, there is supposedly a landmark or maqam where Sayyidina Isa will destroy Dajjal It's called Bab Lud. I don't know where it is. Some people say it's a Tel Aviv airport, because the Prophet ﷺ said it's Bab Lud. Some people said it's the Tel Aviv airport. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. What about yoga? Someone says. Same thing. I mean, it's stretching in a hot room, usually. It's sort of come in our urf that it's merely just stretching and breathing and holding stretches and holding poses and all that stuff. So I'm more worried about, the stretchy pants than about the Hinduism. So whenever I seen that, and there's amazingly one time I was sitting at a restaurant one time, I was eating, it was a halal restaurant. I said, let me go support this new halal restaurant. And it's during the coronavirus, right? And I'm sitting there, and it's outdoor seating. So, I'm there to support the halal restaurant, and I'm eating my hamburger. And I didn't know this, though. The owner, she comes out and she says, we take pictures of all the customers because we're new and we try to get our social media going. Can I take a picture? I said, take a picture. So she takes a picture. I didn't realize behind me, the yoga group, the yoga whatever, studio, they couldn't do it indoors. They had to do it outdoors. They're all stretching in the most ridiculous poses, right? Which I'm thinking, when I saw the picture, people showed it to me. They're like, look behind you. I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm thinking to myself, what person would allow like their mom to pose like that in front of everyone in the street like this, in those pants? Like, it's just something that it's not for us. It's, if you're raised the way we're raised up, that we cover our body, it's just not something that happens, right? It's not something that you can imagine possible happening. I mean, if I was walking with my mom and her keys dropped, I wouldn't even let her bend down and pick it up to be exposed and vulnerable in that situation, let alone doing it and hold the pose. And there are guys in the class that, to me, that's really what I'm worried about. The Hinduism, the humming and the oming and stuff should all be out the window as well. Any advice for Islamic societies regarding gender interactions? We run an ISOC in UK and host a dinner annually. You can expect some haram interactions. What's the best thing for the ISOC, or the Islamic Society, to do? We call them here MSA. In England, they call them ISOC. I would say that, you have to spread a culture. This thing is a culture. It's a knowledge. It's a recognition that everyone has of the importance of lowering the gaze, the importance of dressing properly. And I don't think, though, as a college student, other college students will necessarily listen to anybody, right? So but you can try and promote those things and promote general separation of genders. There should be at least general separation of genders. I believe in that. And that's at least by a big space in between. I think that it's a tough situation that you're in, and you just got to do your best. I wouldn't necessarily advise cutting off the ISOC and the MSA because they're not doing everything perfectly. I think that's maybe an extreme as well. But I don't know. It's a tough situation. And every ISOC is different. Saliha says, what lessons have you learned as being a teacher or leader that you would apply as a parent? I would say that it's kindness, clarity, and persistence is the key. Oftentimes, hard to find three of these come together. The kind parents are often unclear. Okay? They're oftentimes unclear. Like, so they don't, they lack persistence and discipline. So to apply consistency and discipline and kindness at the same time is the challenge. But that's what it's going to be. For example, like, how do I, teach kids? I try to teach kids, like my kids, let's say, in a way that's practical for everybody. And I just focus on the fundamentals. And so, you know what? I'm actually going to share something with you guys right here that is so beneficial. So beneficial. Okay? I'm going to share it with you. And I just practice one or two of these words at the dinner table every day until, they grow up. Okay? Until they grow up. And hopefully, by the time that happens, they will have memorized these words. So it's small, little, but persistent, consistent. Not every single day. I want my kids looking at the Arabic language, even if it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes, okay? Even if it's 5-10 minutes. I want them reciting a dua. And over the years, they don't really feel that anything happens. If I say, here, recite for me Surah Al-Waqi'ah, and he recites it, okay? And I try never to get upset if they get it all wrong, right? If I say that, how do I open this AirDrop thing? I want it to be a good experience. I want them to feel that nothing really happened. But over the days, you as a parent are with them so much, okay, that it's going to have an impact. So it's persistence, it's discipline and kindness, and it's clarity. I'm very clear. Even if relatives do something haram, I'm very clear with them. That's haram, right? But we're not going to you're not going to go and say that to them. You're not going to disrespect them. But I'm telling you right now, that's haram, right? And they have learned, unfortunately, but it's important, they've learned that there are some Muslims who don't do their thing. And there's a gradient of Muslims. They've learned that. They don't have this naive view that all the Muslims are practicing Muslims, right? They know that there's a gradient of Muslims. And I tell them we're on a gradient too. There are people better than us. We're weak. What can we do? Hopefully you're stronger than us when you grow up. Okay? Now let's look at this link that I'm going to share with you right here. It's flashcards. Okay? This flashcards, I don't know who made this Quizlet. I'm sure we can find out who made it. May Allah reward them for making this. Created by Muzammil 87. Okay? Muzammil 87. 330 words that comprise of 80% of Quranic vocabulary. And who can't look at this and study this, a couple times, one word a day? One word a day. One. You finish guaranteed in 2 years. Because let's say you don't have family, you might miss a couple days because of excuse. One word a day, your kids will have studied every word in there, 80% of the Quranic vocabulary. One word a day, right? So easy. So it's consistency, persistence, kindness, discipline. What do I mean by discipline? You don't leave the room, certain things don't happen. You don't leave the room without making your bed. It's a basic thing, right? I care about the fundamentals that every Muslim can do, right? You don't leave the room without bathing. Adab. You don't talk to an elder without adab, okay? If you talk to your parents without adab, I tell them, Salatul Janaza arba'u takbirat, right? You crazy? You call bad adab to your mom, right? Could you comment on the benefit or purpose of Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidqin wa akhrijni mukhraja sidqin waj'al li min ladunka sultanan nasira? In anything that you're going to engage in, if you're going to do anything, this dua is so important. Okay? Let me enter in with sincerity, and let me finish the project with sincerity. Sidq. That I have not betrayed Allah in this matter. Like the sister before AA, she said she wants to get rich. Fi sabilillah. Fine. Say this dua. Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidq. Every time you sit down to do your thing, Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidqin wa akhrijni mukhraja sidqin. Right? Waj'alni min ladunka sultanan nasira. And give me the sultan, the power that I'm seeking in this matter, or the effect that comes with your aid, not without your aid. With your aid. So someone wants to be a doctor. Someday you're not going to be a doctor, right? You want to exit gracefully. So let me enter in with sincerity and exit gracefully. Gracefully for us means in obedience to Allah. right? And وَاجْعَلْنِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. And when I do it in the middle, let me have the divinely aided strength to do that. All right, folks. Jazakumullahu khairan. Anyone who has any comments, final words, you can do so now and bring any final comments that you have right now. Bismillah. The dua to get rich, it's istighfar and waking up early. But be careful what you ask for, because it's a big test, right? Be very... You can do it. Do you want an ummah that's rich or poor? I'd rather an ummah that's guided. Guided, whether rich or poor. I would rather an ummah that's guided. Okay? So, monitor, ask yourself, if you get rich, how to be wealthy. Right? You're just going to pile up your possessions? Okay? And then you increase your hisab on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So think before you go into this. And be prepared of, if and when I'm rich, this is how I'm going to act. And have that picture crystal clear in your head before you do this. Because istighfar and waking up early and engaging in some kind of trade or something, it will, but within time you're going to get wealthy. These are guarantees from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how are you going to be wealthy is the real question. Dua for high risk pregnancy. Yes, it is Surah إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وحقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وتخلت. That fourth ayah to be repeated. So that those verses are about the earth, and we're made of the earth. And at the last verse there is about emptying the earth. وَأَلْقَتْ مَا فِيهَا وَتَخَلَّتْ. So if the earth of your baby is what? The womb. And remove what's in it and become empty. But there are also verses about the pregnant women in the Quran, so you should look them up. I had them all listed at some point, but I will inshallah get them later, because I don't have them right now, but they are there for pregnant women. And I had a blog post. Safina Society has a blog post for that. Right? Let me just see if I can find it real quick. Actually, you know what? Can someone who wants to do a good deed go to Safina Society blog and link up for her the dua? I think I put a couple for pregnancy there. I'm not sure, but I think I did. Nadia Jean-Louis says, how to keep your children's education relevant to our culture when we are not surrounded by people that share it. Our Islamic education should be about the foundations of things, okay? And every parent owes it to their child to teach them a trade. So whatever trade, all right, that you're engaged in, that's the relevancy. So you should teach your child your trade. If you computer program, teach them that. If she's talking, though, about Islamic education, right, then you should look at where the shubuhat are. Where are the pitfalls? And emphasize the vaccines for those pitfalls. You know, whatever the pitfalls are in your town or society, emphasize those matters. Right? So for me, I see like this idea of all religions are equal, and we should be like the Dalai Lama says, beyond religion and all that stuff. And I say, no, we have haqq here, and we emphasize that. Right? The Prophet is al-haqq. Okay. Azra says, can you please write the dua you talked about before when making dua to be good? It was something like وَالْطُفْ وَخَيْرٍ. Also, we have that in a blog post and a video too. في خير ولطف وعافية. في خير ولطف وعافية. There it is. When you did community updates, you said you would cover one day who you studied under and the great people you have met. Oh, maybe I did begin on that, and we actually stopped doing them, but that's a good idea. When we start getting back to community updates, hopefully we will get that, inshallah ta'ala. We'll do that. As a community, slowly as we get into normalcy, what should we not forget about this special time? Honestly, it's very upsetting to see that youth, they don't go to masajid anymore. So if the masajid have protocols for salah, for maybe age 13 and up, 14 and up, or whatever, they should have that, protocol and observe that protocol and go to the masajid. Because if you're talking about the new normal of, things just being online, or if you're talking about as we exit the corona time and we return to normalcy, I'll tell you what we're going to have missed: the family time. That's obvious. That's the big one. The biggest one is the family time. And a lot of people had hardships in the beginning, but have gotten around to it and started to get along. A lot of times, husband and wife were like, can't believe you're in my face all this time. And the kids too. But by the second, third month of this, all that rust is off and people are now getting along far better. So this is what we're going to cherish, is that great amount of time spent together. Usually Saturdays, there's so many activities, right? There's so many things going on. Sometimes I remember during the week, a regular Monday to Friday week, you might see your kids at the dinner table 4 times a week, maybe at breakfast 2 times a week, maybe help for homework once a week. But the day goes by and you don't see them a lot. But now you see them, a ton. So that's what we're not going to forget most. All right, so MM has answered about some of the ayats for the pregnant woman. Jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. I have one thing to ask of everybody, and that is to spread the word about our 1-year full-time intensive program. All right, and that is what I'm going to share with you right now. The intensive program, this image right here, okay, that we got going, is extremely important. And let me, just put it up. Let me go back. There was no sound. But what I was saying was that image right there, the 1-year full-time intensive. Spread the word. Okay. All the information's at safinasociety.org. Study with us and our teachers, and we met multiple teachers, Sheikh Osama, Mufti Niyaz. Okay. And we have guests, and we have other things, and we're covering sciences of the Quran, hadith, aqidah, usul, fiqh, grammar, syntax, tasawwuf, khitaba, how to teach, how to speak. All this stuff we're covering. Spread the word, all right, so that we can, get the students can benefit from this. Anyone who wants to study 9 to 3, this is your chance. So again, I'm going to put this image up again so you can look at it for a few minutes, and then we will log off. So jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanakallah bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wal 'asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Nadia Jean-Louis is asking, can beginner attend? Beginner can attend if they know the letters. The only prerequisite is that if I was to put for you, for example, this word up, this word, for example, you should be able to read it. You should be able to know what this word is, right? If I was to say, to type in something like this, you should know that this says هذا قلم kitab. Okay, that you should know. We will not be teaching how to connect the Arabic words, Arabic letters to make words. You should know that. You should know that the alif doesn't connect after it; it only connects before it. That basic stuff you should know. That's the prerequisite. If you work, you can catch up on the recordings. Everything will be recorded. Okay. So again, go to the website and check it all out. The website, I'll type it in here real quick. And we need to spread the word. Tell your family, tell your friends, hit up the WhatsApp groups, and bi'idhnillah ta'ala, this program is going to be a huge success. All right, people are already talking about it. We're already getting emails. This program is going to be a huge success. So book your seat. Tell your friends to get in and reserve a spot quickly before we max out. So jazakumullahu khairan again, and I'll leave you with the image. You could take any information that you need from it.